Make some noise for the man, the real legend. Ladies and gentlemen, the Ravenous Bird. How you doing, Ravenous Bird?
Shalom. I'm doing good. How are you?
Shalom. I am doing well, man. Your voice is beautiful. Coming across very nice. How's your day today, sir?
Very good. Very early.
Awesome, awesome. Well, listen, man, I want to thank you for joining us. I appreciate this. This was long awaited. Everybody's talking about the video we did 2 years ago. The video we did, I was in Matt's Rain, aka I was in the United States of America in Maine.
Yep.
And because of your teachings, bringing the name Yao to us, my family and I left, packed up everything, and now we're living in the Philippines, baby.
That's right.
All right, we're going to get to it, man, because I know these people don't want to hear my voice. And like I said before, I'm not going to be doing much talking today. The last interview, I did a lot of talking because I was too excited to have you. But now I'm going to ask you a question, and you're on trial today. All right?
Yeah. That's
I
fine.
want you to make believe you're in the courthouse and you're on the witness stand. And this for the audience, for those who are watching, this is all about clarity, clarification, clarity. So he's not really on trial. We know who he is. We believe it with our whole hearts, and we ain't going back. But let's get it on. Let's get it on. You are watching. You are watching TMB, Truth Matters Broadcasting. All right, we're getting it on. We're getting it on. We're here. We're doing it. All right. So, how are you, Mr. Ravenous Bird? How are you today?
I am very good.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So, what sparked this meeting? Well, again, it's long awaited, and we were waiting for you to come back. And I know you are busy. Your schedule are busy. I remember when I was in Matsurain, it was very hard to get through. And then the internet was, across the seas was bad. So now I'm here in the Philippines. You're here in the Philippines, and we have good internet service. So I'm looking forward to a great time today.
Okay.
One of the questions that I have for you is someone on my chat was asking, how do I know that this is the Ravenous Bird? So many has come before, and how do we know that this guy is the Ravenous Bird? That's the question he put out there. Okay. So we're not going to start with that, though. We're not going to start with that question as yet. What I want to do is first, I'd like you to introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit about you. Who are you? That's a very important question to start this one off. Who are you?
I'm just a man who's obsessed with the truth and wants to serve my Creator and do His will. I'm not some Superman or some otherworldly creature. I'm just a normal person, but I have a thirst and a desire to obey Him and to keep His commandments and to teach His word. That's who I am.
So tell us a little bit. What is your name? We know you as the Ravenous Bird. Is it okay for you to tell people who your name, what your name is, and just pretty much give us the path? How did you just tell us your name and how did you get to this path? You said you're a man who wants to serve the Creator, and so you definitely have a love for the truth, love for the Creator. So tell us a little bit about your path. How do you get here? How do you got here?
Well, my government name is Tory Thorpe, and I've been on this journey, I guess, my whole life. I've been always interested in the scriptures, interested in biblical history, and I wanted answers to questions, and I had an insatiable desire to know what the scriptures were talking about and the history and all that, archaeology and linguistics, and I just have always had this burning desire to know, and that's pretty much been my life for the past, as long as I can remember. I can't put this book down. Um, so even when I was a young child, that's been the way. That's how it's been with my life, and finally getting to the age I am now, knowing what I'm supposed to do, um, with the knowledge I have obtained. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because finally it's come together, and um, I know what I'm supposed to do
Hmm.
with this knowledge, with this information. That's all.
Now, tell us about your path to the knowledge you obtained. Were you a part of a religion, or you say you've been on this path since your child?
Yeah. Well, I never really was part of a s- uh, a church or a synagogue. I mean, you know I'm I come from a black family, so I've been exposed to church, um, but my family wasn't very religious. They weren't very um, committed to going to church every week. Yeah, every now and then they would go. But my mother had a Bible that had been handed down to her from her mother. So my grandmother had given my mother a Bible, and I never forgot that when I came across it in my mother's room, it fascinated me, and I just wanted to know, what is this, what's in it, and I started to read it and study it, and I kind of stole it from my mother. She didn't know I had it, and of course she didn't know it was missing because she wasn't even reading it, so she didn't know it was gone. But I must have been about 9 years old or 10 years old when I lifted this Bible from my mother's room, and I began to read it, and just fascinated me, the things I was reading, and then it just filled my head with questions, lots of questions, and then the rest of my life has been trying to find the answer to those questions. That's all. And
Wow.
like I said, being obsessed with finding those answers. That's been my life.
Wow. So where does those finding those answers led you? You were born. I'm assuming you were born in the states. Where in the states were you
Yeah,
born, and
I
how
was
from
born
the age
in
of nine?
I was
How,
born in
okay, go ahead.
I was born in St. Louis, Missouri. My father was a military man, so we moved around quite a bit. We moved from St. Louis to Massachusetts when my father was restationed at Fort Devens in Massachusetts, Boston, Massachusetts. So I grew up in Boston, but we're from St. Louis, um, and I went to school in Boston and got my education, my undergrad and postgraduate studies
Mhm.
in Boston.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and even all through high school, all through college, I had still this, itching thorn in my, this thorn in my brain about the Bible and wanting to know what it meant. So, I would go home after school or after practice, after whatever I was doing, and I would crack open that Bible and try to understand what it's saying. Um, all through high school, all through college. Uh, Finally, after I finished college, I decided to take my studies more seriously, and I enrolled in a post graduate studies program at Hebrew College in Brookline, Massachusetts, to learn. I wanted to learn to read the Bible in its source language. I wanted to learn biblical Hebrew, so I did that, and I began to learn the languages of the scriptures and being able to read them without a translation, which was very, very, very instrumental in my understanding of the scriptures. Was not needing a filter, but being able to read them directly from the source. That was a major step in my growing in my knowledge of the scriptures. That was uh, that was before I moved overseas. I went. I took it even a step further than that. I moved to Israel in 26 because I wasn't getting all the answers I wanted, and I felt the best thing to do would probably be to move to the Holy Land and to soak up that environment
Mm.
and see what I could learn from that. So I lived in Israel for many years. Um, and that was a wonderful experience to walk on the land and see places that are actually mentioned in the Bible and all the history that goes along with that. But there's still one thing I hadn't gotten the answer to, and that was, what is his name? That was really the big question I had, was what is his name? And there were so many answers that had been given prior that it was confusing. It was really hard to decipher the truth regarding his name. And so I needed to know definitively what is his name. How do you pronounce his name? How can you say you believe in a God, you don't know his name? It just didn't make any sense to me. So I needed to answer that question ASAP.
Mm.
Um, and I was not getting the answer even when I moved to Israel. But while I was in Israel, I was working for this company, and they offered me a position in the Philippines. And at first, I was hesitant. I didn't know anything about the Philippines. I didn't quite understand the assignment, but they explained it to me, and I said, "Okay, I'll go over there." And they wanted me to manage some offices, so I came to the Philippines and uh, worked from worked some offices over here, and then suddenly my questions began to be answered. I
Mm.
began to receive the information that I was looking for all of a sudden, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. That moment of revelation came after I moved here to the Philippines.
Wow. So you talked about filter. Were you talking about filter through religion or Bible? Is this, did you not believe in any of the religious organization or even the Bibles that you were reading while you made the decision to move to the Holy Land?
I knew that if you want to really learn something and know something, you have to see it for yourself. You can't just take someone's word or someone else's opinion. You got to do it. You got to do your own fact checking. And I knew that um, if I'm gonna, if I want to really know something, I have to get up and go do it myself. And that's why I decided to move to Israel, because I was, hearing about it and listening to other people talk about the place, but I hadn't seen it for myself. So that was a void or a blank in my understanding that I needed to fill by going there and
Mm.
seeing it for myself, and not just taking someone else's word for it and secondhand, but actually having firsthand knowledge of the place. So that's why I did that, because I wanted to have firsthand knowledge of what I was talking about, and not just you know someone else's uh, someone else's view of it. And that was really important because I found out a lot of stuff that I thought I knew was wrong.
Ooh.
When you actually start doing your own research and you look at stuff for yourself, you find out that some of the stuff that you thought was true wasn't exactly correct. And that's why it's so important to do your own fact checking, fact finding.
Wow, this is incredible. A wise man once said, "It's not what you know it's not what you think you know, but it's what you think you know for sure that's just ain't so." There's so much things we've learned growing up, and then we come back and we realize, wait a minute, there was more to this. There's one such saying that I remember as a young boy. It's jack of all trade, master of none, right? And I thought that's where it ends. Jack of all trade, master of none. But there's another part to that. There's another part to that. The part is, but still better than a master of one. See? So there's some things you thought you knew that you didn't know that there was more to the story. For
Yeah.
instance, the Star Spangled Banner. The land of the free and the home of the brave. And we sing that song and we stand on it, and then you realize, wait a minute, there's some missing verses here. And when you really look at the truth about the Star Spangled Banner, who wrote it and what it was about, it wasn't good for black people in them time,
No.
over
No.
100 plus years. So when you talk about fact check or wrong information, what are some of the information that you found out that was wrong or incorrect?
Um. Well, a lot of the modern interpretation of the Bible is based off of the recent archaeological excavations of sites in Israel.
Hmm.
So, you've got scholars on one side of the fence who believe the Bible is a book of fiction, and that's because of their archaeological research. And you've got others who, they believe the Bible is perfect, there's no flaws in it, but they don't really have the archaeological expertise to back up what they're saying. It's just a matter of belief and faith, and they just believe it because they want to. They don't really have any, any evidence to back up what they believe. They just, oh, it's the word of God, and that's it. That's all they need. It's just that moniker, the word of God. But I needed more than that. I needed to be able to match what I was reading with facts on the ground. And one of the things I learned is that there's a lot of places that the, the scriptures mention that archaeologists don't have the correct location. So, for
Hmm.
example, if you look at the city of Jericho, it's a very, very important city in the scripture, but the details of its location versus what archaeologists believe where it's located don't match. And
Hmm.
that was an eye opener for me. I'm like, well, if they're calling this Jericho and it doesn't match the details of the scripture and the other literature like Josephus and whatnot, then their conclusions about whether or not the Bible is factual is flawed because they're looking at the wrong place.
Hmm.
So when an archaeologist digs up this place called Tel El Sutan in the Holy Land, and they say, okay, this is Jericho, but it doesn't match the details of the Bible, and the date is wrong, and other stuff about the capture of that city and how did it fall don't match up. But then you find out, well, that's not really the same. that's that's not the place that the Bible is talking about. You're digging in the wrong place, and that's why you're coming to a conclusion that's flawed because that's not the place that the Bible is talking about. And so that was one of the things that I really had to come to grips with, is that archaeologists are people. They're just people, and they can make mistakes. But
Hmm.
the problem is that when they make a mistake, it becomes they publish it in a journal, they publish it in some type of science uh, publication. It becomes accepted as factual, and then that colors or that informs what everybody else thinks about the Bible. So I had to I had to come to terms with the fact that there are a lot of places that archaeologists are looking at because they think this is a biblical site, and it's the wrong place. Wrong
Wow.
place.
Like Telerad, the true Jerusalem or Jerusalem site is not where it is right now, right? Is it in Telerad, or is it right in the same? Is the right
Well,
place where it is?
Telluride is fascinating because that's the only place ever where there has been found epigraphic information or epigraphic evidence of the temple. Like they
Mm,
found an inscription there that mentions the temple, and that's never happened anywhere else. And they know there was a temple there. They can see the outlines of a structure that resembles the temple of the Bible. So they know there was a temple there. but they don't find anything comparable to that in the Jerusalem that everyone thinks is where the temple was. So that to me is another indication that okay, this very likely, if not 100% positive, that the place that everyone thinks is Jerusalem is not Jerusalem. And that was a major earth-shaking moment for me to you know because everything about that land, the geology, the archaeology, is based off of the assumption that these sites are correct. And the fact, if you actually do the digging and research, the fact is they are not. They are not. That land has been destroyed, conquered, and renamed. The Romans renamed places, and the Christians came in there, and they also did some renaming and re-identify. They gave names to places based on their understanding of what they thought it should look like and where things should be. And archaeologists accept those conclusions without really critical analysis, and they end up being wrong. They don't match, and they're wrong. And this is why you have these crazy conspiracy theories that the Holy Land is not in the Levant, it's not in the Middle East because of these inconsistencies. Whereas scholars say, no, 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 they're not inconsistencies. They're just proof that the Bible is not what it claims to be. The Bible is a fiction. It's a they take it to that extreme. The Bible is a fiction. It has misinformation. It has this. It has that. It has all these errors in it. So you really can't trust it to tell you reliable history.
Mm.
And the other side is that no, the Bible is factual. It's just that you're looking in the wrong you're looking in the wrong place. And I realize that it's in the middle. It is the right place. It's just that some of these locations that scholars are claiming to be the Jerusalem, the Jericho, the 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 Bethlehem, and all these other places, they're not the right place. They're not the actual places that are mentioned. And so when they dig there and they don't find what the scripture says, they take that as evidence the Bible is wrong.
Mm. So let me ask you a question. When you say in the middle, right? We're talking about Bibles, right? Because most people today, especially people who leave their religious organization, believe that the Bible is, like you said, not is incorrect, or it's written by the white man, so it can't be true. Or what is your take on the Bible? What is your take? Is it correct? Is it right? Is it
Yeah,
good?
my take is that it's correct, but the problem is it's been interpreted wrong by people who really have no business interpreting it, and that's the problem. You've got people who claim to be authorities who are not really qualified to talk about what's in this book, and that's the problem.
Mm,
Who you listen to. That's why I need to see things for myself and learn things for myself, because you're getting so many contradictory views from other people who claim to be able to interpret and explain this book, um, and they're not doing a great job of it. They're really just there's lots of people with access to grind. There clearly is a sentiment among critical scholars that this is not a factual book, and we shouldn't uh, find, or we shouldn't publish any conclusions that makes it seem like it could be factual. So they are trying to diminish the significance of this book by deliberately trying to show you that it's wrong. It's wrong here. It's wrong there. It's wrong there. They are deliberately trying to show you that this book is flawed,
mm.
and that's unfortunately that's mainstream scholarship. That's conventional scholarship.
All right. So you talked about source language when you were in Israel, when you were in the Holy Land. You spoke of source language and you were seeking to find the truth. is there error in the King James version and all these different versions of the Bible?
Oh yeah,
Why you choose to seek other source, and are those sources different from what you have already laid hands on, like the King James, starting
every
from 6?
translation that we have was made by people who had to become familiar with the source language. They couldn't make their translation if they didn't have a working knowledge of the source language. They had to learn Hebrew and Greek and so forth to be able to make translations.
Right.
So my deal was, okay, if they can do it, why can't I? Why am I just listening to them? Maybe I need to learn these languages so I can see if they made any mistakes. If you don't learn these languages, you don't know if they made a mistake because you can't fact check them. So when
Hmm.
you actually take time to learn the language, now you can go back and look at these translations and say, oh, okay, they were wrong here. Okay, that's right. Okay, that's wrong. You know what I'm saying? Now you can actually fact check their work. You can look over their work and critique it because now you know the language just like they did. But if you don't know the language, you're stuck. You have no way of verifying if they're correct in their translation.
Wow. So now you
So
said,
King James scholars worked in the 17th century. That was 400 years ago. So it is possible to learn the language. If they did it 400 years ago, then it can be done today. But if you don't take the time to do that, right, to learn the language and to become as proficient in it as they were and better, then you won't be able to go over their work and see if they made
mm,
mistakes. And they made a
wow.
lot of mistakes.
So now
Lots of
so you realize, sorry, sorry to cut you off. So you realize these mistakes, and what's your take on this? What do you? How did you?
My take
And,
is that if you really want to know a book, you have to learn to read and to speak the language of that book. You can't use a translation.
that's very important. So tell us a little bit about this source language, and what is it called? What is the source language called? Because you have so many different versions of Hebrew today. And I remember when I used to go to church, the pastors will come up and they'll speak one Hebrew word, and or they'll speak a Greek word, and they make you think that they're just so knowledgeable of the past ancient tongues. What are the language that you speak, and what is it? What's the difference between what
We
you
can
speak?
simplify it by simply saying biblical Hebrew. That would be the easiest way for people who are new to understand what I'm saying. The Bible has a evidence record. The scriptures were written in a particular language, and we have the textual witnesses of that language. And I'm going to call it this for this discussion, biblical Hebrew.
Mm,
Biblical Hebrew. When you say there are many versions of Hebrew, that's because there are people um, who are trying to speak Hebrew or trying to revive a version of Hebrew that they can use in everyday life. But it's not necessarily the biblical Hebrew that we see in the Bible. There's a difference between modern Hebrew that's spoken in Israel and the Hebrew that we see in the Bible.
mm,
Very different. So I wanted to learn. I learned the modern Hebrew, but that's not going to get you close to the scriptures because it's not the same. You have to learn the Hebrew that was actually used to write this book. If I
mm,
tell you, go read Shakespeare, you speak English, I speak English, but we don't speak Shakespeare English. So what do you have to do to understand Shakespeare? You have to go back and learn Shakespeare's English. You just can't pick up a book and I've read Hamlet. You've probably read Hamlet. I can't understand what the hell they're saying because the English is Shakespearean. It's not. It's very old version of English. No one speaks
mm,
like that anymore. I can sort of make it. You struggle through it. I can sort of make sense of it, but it's not the same English that we speak today. What he spoke back then. So that's my point is that if you really want to understand Shakespeare, you have to learn the type of English that he was speaking. You can't just use modern English because that's not going to help you. It's going to, you're going to be lost.
mm.
So I wanted to know if you want to know this book or any book, you have to know the language that it was written in. You got to go back to the language that the authors were using when they wrote the book.
Hmm.
That's the only way you're going to understand what they're talking about. You can't use a revised language or translation. You've got to go back and try to learn the language that they used when they wrote this book.
So
If I
what is
want
it?
to learn, if I'm picking up a book in Spanish, I don't speak Spanish, but if I want to pick up a book that was written in Spanish and I really want to understand this book, should I go get a translation into English?
Nah, you're gonna have some missing stuff.
No, no. Should I get a translation into Russian or German?
Nope.
No, you got to go learn Spanish. You got to
That-
learn the Spanish that was used by that author. Otherwise, you're always going to be, vague or there's going to be gaps in your knowledge if you don't learn the language that the author used to write that book. You will have gaps in your knowledge. You really won't know what's being communicated by that author if you don't know the language that he used to write that book.
All right. You're stressing the point on the language. What is that language? What is it called? Is there a name of
Biblical Hebrew. Just call it biblical Hebrew.
Okay. But it wasn't written in English for certain.
Right. It's
So
written in.
you
It was written in biblical Hebrew. When I say biblical Hebrew, I mean the Hebrew that was used during the biblical period.
ah is there a dialect to it? How do you speak it? How did you learn it?
What do you mean a dialect? There's
Like you know how all right, you talk about Shakespearean when it comes to English, right? And that's
right.
the different type of dialects or different type of ways it's spoken. If I want to learn this language or this source language or biblical Hebrew, how would I know it to be able to compare it? I guess what I'm asking is, do you have that biblical Hebrew language that you can now compare it to
Yeah.
that?
Anybody can do that, but they have to take the time to uh, uh, get get a Hebrew text, okay, and spend time learning how to how that language works. How does the verb system work? The grammar and the syntax, the morphology, the orthography. They have to actually look at the text and decode it, decipher it. Why are these words arranged this way? Why are words spelled this way? Why are words in this position in certain positions versus other positions? That's how you learn. You have to actually engage the actual text itself versus looking at a translation. A translation is someone who's already done that for you. But like I said, if you don't know the language for yourself, you don't know if that translation is accurate.
Awesome. Do you know that language?
Yes, I do. I know it.
All
I
right.
spent a lot of years making sure I do.
How do you speak it? How does it sound?
How does it sound?
Yeah, like maybe can you read something for us or just recite something for us?
Um, yeah, I can read something for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, this is Truth Matters Broadcasting, and we're live with the Ravenous Bird. And today's topic, the Ravenous Bird on trial. Now, the reason for that, if you go to your Bibles and you read Isaiah 46 and verse 11, the Creator spoke of a ravenous bird who he will personally will send and equip to execute his counsel. And if you look closely at that verse, you will see that the Creator says, I have purposed it and I will do it. This, ladies and gentlemen, is that ravenous bird. And today we're asking the question, is he the ravenous bird that or should we look for someone else? So if you're joining us just now, or you've been with us a while, this is where we're getting at. We're gonna ask some questions. He's here to answer the questions. If you have questions and you would like them to be answered, type them up in the comment. Now there's a lot of people online here, so I may not get to your comment, but I'm going to scroll through it. I set it on slow so it can comes up, but your comment might move. So just keep typing it until I am able to read it. All right, go ahead,
All right.
Ravensburg.
I'm going to read the very first verse of the Bible. So for most folks, this will be Genesis chapter 1, verse 1.
Sure.
All right. In the biblical Hebrew, it would be Bar Rashid Bar Allah Im Atha Shemem Wa Atha Aratz. That's the first 7 words of the Bible. And it simply says, in the beginning, the higher power created heaven and the earth. Now, the way I pronounce it, the way there's many um, different, like you said, versions of Hebrew that will pronounce it differently than what I just did. But the beauty is that the words themselves, the way they are spelled, don't change, and their meanings don't change. So if I say tomato versus tomato, everyone understands I'm talking about the exact, I'm talking about a particular fruit. They're not going to confuse it with an apple. If I say tomato, you say tomato, we're not going to be lost. So the pronunciation is not uh, critical always, but the words themselves, how they are spelled and how they are arranged in this text, that is critical, and that's what I mean by that's biblical Hebrew.
Mhm.
So Ba Rashet Bar Alaim in the beginning created the higher power, Atha Shememu Atha Arats, the heaven and the earth. That's how the ancient uh, people in the biblical period would speak this language.
Mm.
Modern Hebrew would change it. It would sound different. It would sound Bereshit bara Elohim ata shamayim wa ata aretz. That's how it would sound if you were listening to a modern Jewish person read that. But everyone
Mm.
agrees that that's very late. It's a changed, revised way of speaking the Hebrew. But every word is the same. They're not going to skip words and add words. It's still the same 7 words. They just pronounce them differently because of the way the language has evolved among them. But the,
Okay.
the ancient pronunciation would be how I just did it. And of course, it would take me a while to explain, eh, very long, to explain why my pronunciation differs from the modern Hebrew. But you know, there's reasons for that, and like I said, this is uh, reading it and speaking the language the way it would have been spoken in the biblical period versus how people do it today in the modern times.
Awesome. So now you have this, you have all this information, you have all these facts. You recognize a lot of things was mistranslated. The locations of some of these places are just not right. And you now have this burning desire, but now you move to the Philippines. What happened here in the Philippines? And did you feel like you had to spread this message to the world?
Yeah, like I said, I didn't come to the Philippines looking for answers. I came here on a job assignment, but it wasn't until I got here that a lot of the questions that I had became answered. And the main one was his name. And folks say, "Well, how did you figure that out?" I didn't figure it out. It was nothing that I myself did. It was simply revealed to me. One day while I was studying and asking him, he revealed to me, "This is how you pronounce my name, Yah O," and that really changed everything. That information set me on the course I am now. It changed everything. Changed everything.
Hmm.
Um, and I didn't just the next day go out and start telling everybody. It took me. I took that and sat on it for about 5 years because everything I thought I knew about the language and what I thought I knew about the Hebrew and whatnot, that pronunciation challenged and changed all of that. So now I had to go back and unlearn and rethink almost everything. And it's funny because when that pronunciation was revealed to me, Yah oh, I had seen that before. I had seen that in the course of my studies before, but the scholarly consensus was that that was just some quirk Greek version of his name. It wasn't really how it was pronounced. It was dismissed by scholars as legitimate.
Hmm.
And then after I came here and that name came to me again, then I spent 5 years researching it and finding out, well, why do they dismiss this? What is the problem with this what is the reason that consensus scholarship has a negative opinion of this name? And then I found out that there's mountains of evidence to support that is the correct pronunciation. Problem is that scholarship took a um, decided to go a different way in the 19th century with Gesenius's reconstruction of the name. He basically he's the one who invented the pronunciation Yahweh, Yah,
Mm.
and that was just his best guess. He didn't have any previous evidence to support that. He basically just took the modern Jewish system of pronunciation and he, did a little tinkling here and he came up with Yahweh. And that is what the scholarly community accepted as the true name from the 19th century till today. And so I had came across that pronunciation. I had seen it, but like I said, it was dismissed by scholars. So I, not knowing any better, I automatically didn't give it much attention. But when I came to the Philippines and that name hit me again, I said, "Wait a minute. Let me look at this more closely. I mean, let me see what is it about this name that they actually have a problem with." And then I found out this is the only name with a pronunciation that it's attested in the first century, the third century, the fifth century, the ninth century. You can go back centuries and find that this is the
This is
way
the
that
way
name
that
is
name is
pronounced,
pronounced,
has
has
always been
always been
pronounced
pronounced
until the
until the
destruction
destruction
of the
of the
Second Commonwealth, the so-called Jewish Commonwealth in the first century by the Romans. There was never any debate or controversy about that name until after the nation was destroyed by the Romans, and then the language began to die out. Once the language began to die out, then it became anybody's best guess how
how
Hebrew was
people
pronounced and
pronounce
how this name was pronounced. And that's where the confusion comes from, is when the nation was destroyed and the language began to die.
Wow. That's amazing. So there was no translation of the name Yahoo from back then till till the discovery of the name here.
Not a translation. A translation is when you define a word and you give it a meaning in a different language. You know, if I say the word uh what's a good example of a translation? If I say the Japanese word arigato, right? You
Mhm.
might know what that means, but if that's that's the Japanese word for um I believe you're welcome or thank you, something like that.
Yep.
So that would be if I take arigato and I translate it as thank you or you're welcome, that will be a translation, right? But
Yeah.
if I see the word in Japanese arigato, it's going to look like a to me and to you, we wouldn't know how to pronounce it. It look like what the hell is that on paper? How do you pronounce that?
Right.
Someone who speaks that language have to come to you and say, okay, this is how you pronounce it, arigato. Ah, okay. So now you have a not a translation, but you have a transliteration. Transliteration is when you take the word and you explain it phonetically. You show someone how to pronounce it. You don't tell them what it means.
Ah.
You don't. Yeah, you haven't gotten to the meaning part yet. You're just telling them how you pronounce this word. This word on this paper, I know you don't understand it, but it's pronounced arigato, and it means the translation means you're welcome or thank. I can't remember which one it is. I think it's uh, thank you or you're welcome. But
Right.
that's will be the translation versus the pronunciation. Arigato would be the transliteration. And
Oh.
what I'm saying is that this name that everyone's trying to pronounce in their own different way, it has an evidence record, a transliteration evidence record of Yahoo going back centuries. There was
Wow.
never any other way to pronounce it except Yahoo. It was never Yahweh or Yahuwah or
Haya.
Yahweh. None of these names that we people call it today are evidenced in the record of antiquity except for Yahweh. That's the one that we see all over the place in the evidence record. It's
Wow.
mountains of evidence that to support this is how this name was pronounced by the native speakers of biblical Hebrew. It was pronounced Yahweh,
Wow.
and no other
Wasn't
way.
there wasn't there an archaeology find on that in terms of the not the Leviticus,
Yeah,
I think?
there's archaeology. There's it's the only name with archaeological evidence to back it up.
Wow.
In the
So
Dead Sea
that,
Scrolls, you have a fragment called uh, it's a fragment of the book of Leviticus. It's called 4Q120, a fragment of the Dead Sea Scrolls, where the book of Leviticus is translated into Greek. But the name, when the name of the creator appears in this text, it's transcribed with the Greek letters iota, alpha, omega. Iota,
mm,
alpha, omega. And that, if you speak Greek and you know the rules of the Greek language, that can only be pronounced Yah-O. Yah-O. And what that tells us is that whoever made that translation, that text, when they came to that name, they put it in that script, iota, alpha, omega, because that is the way you pronounce that name. That is the way that name was pronounced by the people who spoke biblical Hebrew.
so the true name of our creator is Yahweh.
There's no other, it's only Yahweh. It's the only correct way to say his name, Yahweh.
So now you have this information. You're living in the Philippines. What next? What happened next? You did some study on that. Definitely, I could see that.
Like I
Uh,
said, I took 5 years off and I just, had to soak this in and go back over everything I thought I knew. And it wasn't until this is like the name came to me in about 2011, 2012.
mm,
And it wasn't until 2017 where I said, okay, I need to share this information with others. And I began to create videos on YouTube to correct some of the misinformation that was already out there about the name. And that's how everything got started. Everything starts with the name. In 2017, that's when I began to create videos, short videos, but informative videos with lots of references and sources, so folks can fact check me, showing you that the only correct way to say his name is Yahweh.
wow. And so you got to this name, and of course, the name is leading you to other things. For instance, I want to ask you, but before I ask you the question, I want to ask you: are you a prophet? Are you? Do you consider yourself a prophet? Are you a prophet? Are you the ravenous bird?
It's really
Um,
not for me to say. If you look in the scriptures, the prophets weren't, they didn't really self proclaim. Um, they were judged by their works by others, and others gave them these names, prophet or so on and so forth. They didn't really, they weren't about self identifying themselves as prophets. Even Moses, even Moshe didn't come out and say, I am a prophet. That was something that the people called him just by looking at his fruit, the fruit of his work. They gave him that title. So when people ask me, "Are you a prophet?" I said, "Well, that's up for people to decide based on what I'm doing, based on my
mm,
works, based on what I've done, and the stuff that I've accomplished since I began teaching. Am I a prophet? That's how you do it. It's not for me to tell you or to make or to push around some title and say you must call me this. I don't care what people call me. Uh, but if my work, if my uh, resume fits that of a prophet, then that's what I would be. But it's really not for me to. It's not for me to judge. It's not for me to sit here and tell folks this is what you must call me.
well, you clearly fit the marks of the ravenous bird of Isaiah 46:11, and I will definitely call you a prophet because, from my experience coming to know you, I didn't watch any of your videos to know you. I didn't. Well, let me back up here. I did watch your videos and know you, but how I got to know you was not from any invitation from anyone. I was searching for the name. I was searching for the name. Now I grew up Christian. I grew up in the Christian religion. So the name that I'm accustomed to calling was Jesus, right? I'm accustomed to calling Jesus, and the Father is the Father. He's God. He's Jehovah. All the names that was written in the Bible, right? So about maybe 2 years ago, when I got to this letter J. That's how it started for me. But it actually started before that because I remember praying about Sunday versus Sabbath. And I'm reading the Bible and I realized, wait a minute, there's something is wrong here because I'm going to church on Sunday and clearly in the Bible, remember the Sabbath day. God spoke it and He wrote it, and He doesn't change. I know that He stays the same. And the so-called Jesus that I used to believe in, and yes, and you heard me right. I said I used to believe in the name of Jesus. I don't because of my research. I now know that it's not true. And we're not going to spend much time here because it's like I said, it's not about me. If you want to see that, go watch my other videos right here on Facebook and on. I did most of my work in Michael L. Sewell SR, so you can go check that out there. But when I got to the truth, I was devastated because the name that I called upon, the name I pray in, the name I bow down to, the God man, I realized the letter J was not given till the year 1524. It changes me. How can I continue knowing that this information speak of a name that's supposed to be above all name, that a name that every tongue shall confess and every knee shall bow? This is what we learn. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying it can't be true because there was no letter J before the year 1524. So that led me on a search to go in and go deeper. And I run upon all these names, Yahuwah, Yahweh, Yahweh Shai, all these names I run upon, and I'm like, there was just too much.
Yeah.
And so I was praying one day. I just had enough because I know, there's a scripture that says you should seek and you should knock and you should ask. And I was doing a lot of knocking and a lot of seeking, but I wasn't doing much asking.
Right.
And the people who I'm asking don't have the answers. Because I remember asking the pastor of my church, why do we worship on Sunday? Why we keep Sunday as a holy convocation? And he looked in my face and he smiled. He said, because Jesus rose on the first day. That's
Yeah.
why we keep it as a holy day. And I said, but there's no scripture to back that up. So like you were saying, there were no evidence to back those names up. So when you find the evidence, you say something is not right, and then you start looking for those. So while I was praying, I just simply uttered these very simple words. I just said, Father, what is your name? That's all I said. I just want to know his name for myself. I
Yeah.
didn't want an interpretation. I didn't want someone, telling me what they think his name was. I just wanted to know from him. And when I said that, I had my phone in my hand, and you popped up right there. It just it just popped up, and what was it? The true name of the creator. And I clicked on it and I watched you and I was blown away. I was blown away because in that YouTube video that you post, it warped all my research. And that's how I start looking at you and of course, I was skeptical at first. Like, who is this guy? And how he speak the language. And it seems like he's the only one that can speak this language and he's teaching this. But what was fascinating, I have to say, what was fascinated with me when it comes to you was like, you're a black man. I was like, I was like, yeah, this is a brother. Because everywhere I went and got my studies was either from white people or from Jewish people, and I wanted something totally different. Look at that. Oh, hold on. I thought TikTok is blocking me again, but they want me to actually do something here. All right, good. You know, and so once I start listening to you and I recognize you that man, this guy's onto something, I said I'm going to put the name of Yahoo to the test, and it has changed my life, changed my family life in ways, man. I'll take 3 weeks just to tell you how it has changed my life. But this is not about me today. I just wanted to give you, my audience, those who are listening, my a little bit of my journey as to how I was introduced to this man and why I believe in my heart of hearts and will never change that he is the ravenous bird of Isaiah 46 and verse 11, because this is a different type of prophet. You know, he's not. I believe in my heart that he's more than a prophet, because a prophet usually, if you look in the scriptures, you will see a prophet takes the message from the Creator and he delivers it to a specific people, which is Israel. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to ask some question on that, and the prophet would say, "This is what God says," and then it would be up to the people whether or not they want to do it, and whatever God would say, whatever Yahweh would say to the people, they would have to decide. And then you see the punishment that comes, or what we call the curse or the blessing for the obedience. The blessing for the obedience or the curse for the disobedience. So I look at it like that. But this man, ladies and gentlemen, is, to me, and this is my opinion, this is my belief. I'm not saying you should believe what I believe. I'm telling you what I believe. I believe he's more than a prophet, because he's not just taking the word, the word of God, the commandments of God, but he's teaching them. He's executing the counsels. That means he has a lot of work to do. He has to stay in it. And so we're going to talk a lot about that. We're going to talk a lot about that. But let's get into, so you got this information, you're spreading the word. I'm pretty certain you got some fight, because there's some people going to say you are a fake, you're a phony. Who is this guy? Especially from the I'd say the Jewish community. Have you got any fight from the Jewish community, from the church community, from the religious community, and from just people in general?
Oh yeah, I got it from all sides. Like I said, the I didn't. This isn't something I figured out. It's something that was revealed to me by the owner of the name. He's the one that opened my eyes and told me this information. So, but I knew I wasn't gonna just go out and just say, "Hey, I had a dream, and this is what God said to me in a dream." That to me, in my critical, skeptical mind, was not going to be the way I was going to present this name to people. Even though folks are, a lot of people are swayed for that type of thing. They want it to be you know, a burning bush type of thing where God spoke to me in a dream, or I had a vision, or I had this, or I wanted something that people could actually hold and touch and feel and examine. So I spent 5 years, like I said, researching this name and getting all the evidence that I could to back it up. And then I began to talk about it to other people, because I didn't expect people just to believe me because I said, "Oh, I had a dream." I wanted to give people sources and references and archaeology and literature that they could look up and see what I'm saying is true. So,
Mm.
of course, when I did that, a lot of folks still didn't want to accept it and still were holding on to their Yahuwah, their Yahweh, their Jehovah, Yahweh, Jesus. They still wanted to hold on to these names, Hashem, all that crap. And I would remain respectful until they crossed the line. I would never lead with disrespect and ad hominem until it was given to me. you know,
Right.
once they cross that line, then it's all right. We this is that's limited fair game. So yeah, I became very defensive, of course, because I was convinced. I am convinced that I'm right, and of course, if you have that disposition, and someone comes along and just trashes it without even looking at the evidence, they just trash it, and they want to discredit it just because it's nothing that they have ever heard of before. It's something that they've come across, and they just want to reject it because they don't know who they don't never heard of you, and so a lot of that created the hostility
Mm.
with trying to talk about this information, because a lot of folks just dismissed it out of hand because it wasn't something that they were familiar with. And like I said, if you ask me a question respectfully and you sincerely want to know why I believe this or that, I would always give respect, and I would always be respectful and courteous, and that's the way I would move. But if you came at me with blasphemy and you just wanted to argue and fight, then that's what we would do. And and I'm gonna punch back twice as hard as you because this is it's personal to me. This is I really am uh, 100% all in on this name. So if you want
Mhm.
to attack it, fine, but have have a rational reason, logical evidence base to do that. Don't just attack it because you don't like it and it's just your opinion. That tells me that you're not even looking at the evidence. You're not even considering the possibility that this may be right. You know, you just want to trash it without giving it a voice. I give things a voice before I give it a veto. Even when I come across stuff that I don't agree with, before I give it a veto, I'm going to look into it. I'm going to see. I'm going to look into it before I just say yes or no. I'm not going to just you know dismiss it and give it a veto without giving it a good look. And that's what
Right.
folks don't do. Folks don't do that. They simply reject a side even before they don't even understand what they're rejecting. It's just not what they believe, so they just want to reject it and dismiss it and trash it and defame it and ridicule it and laugh at it and mock it and so forth without even looking into it. And that was, you know, to me, that's when I kind of lost my patience with people uh,
Right.
because you're not even looking at, you're not even listening to what I'm saying. You're just automatically saying no, it's wrong, you're wrong, you're a false prophet, you're this is that name is crazy, blah blah blah. All that stuff. And like I said, I take this very personal, and that set a fire in me to shoot back. So yeah, there has been a lot of attacks from all sides, um, and I have responded to those attacks. And I've gained a reputation for being not nice.
Well, you are the ravenous bird. After all, if you look at the characteristics of a ravenous bird, they could
Yeah,
be.
exactly. That's another thing. I didn't come out and say I am the ravenous bird. I knew that, but I let folks, you know, come to that conclusion on their own. And then when folks started calling me the ravenous bird, that's when I said, okay, I will accept that. But I didn't come out and say, you must call me the ravenous bird. You must call me this. You must call me that. Because it has to match your works. It just can't be your words. It has to match your works and what you're doing.
Well, you're definitely a credited man because we go to the doctors and we put our trust in these doctors because we believe that they've taken time to study their art and know their craft. So when we go in there, we're trusting ourselves to these complete strangers. When you think about the bus, you go on the bus, you don't know the driver, you don't have a clue, you don't have a clue who the driver is, but you trust the driver because you believe they wear the uniform, they have the
Right.
experience, they're in the bus. Same
Right.
thing with a plane. You never,
Oh, same thing.
you never meet. Some of us never meet the pilot, but we jump on that plane and we're up there 38, 35,000 miles up in the year.
Yeah.
A guy we've never seen. We go to restaurants, the same thing. And one of the reasons is that we believe in we believe that in the accreditation of the person, and you definitely have that. You definitely have that. You're definitely studied. You're definitely learned. You're definitely a man to definitely teach and guide people from the truth. Let me ask you another question here. What are your thoughts on? Because I want to get to the people of the book. But what are your thoughts on religion? What are your thoughts on religion? Is the creator of all religion? Does he accept any religion? What are your thoughts on religion?
Well, I believe what's written in the scriptures by Moses, Masha. We pronounce his name Masha, but I believe what's written in there, and it's very clear from his writings. There is a higher power, a supreme being, and he has certain ways and expectation for those who believe in him. So those expectations, those commandments, those laws, those statutes, um, I believe that's the only true religion. And if religion is just the word religion just means a system of belief
Okay.
referencing a higher power. Whatever that is for you, whatever you believe, that's all religion is. So I don't have a problem with the word religion. Um, it's a system of belief referencing a higher power and what he expects his followers to believe and do and think and behave, and that's fine. I have no problem with that word. Um, but when I read this book is telling me something very different from what others believe, other systems of belief. Um, and so, I've come to the conclusion that this is the correct belief. This is the correct religion, and every other one is wrong. And of course,
That's a bold statement you're making there, man.
yeah, it's not something that most folks would agree with. That they would think all religions are right. They're just going about it a different way, and all these roads lead to the same place. And that's not what I see in this book. That's not what this book is saying.
So we talk about the creator. We know his name. We know he have a specific way of how he deals with things. And we're looking at the promised land or the holy land over there. We realize that most of what they say or what they put on the map is not the right thing. It's definitely incorrect. So tell us a little bit about the people of the land, or the is there a true people of the land? And if there are true people of the land, are those people the true people? If not, how would we know? How would we find out?
Um, well, yeah, that's a big question. The name that everyone pronounces today, Israel. That's an anglicized way of pronouncing the word. But let's just use that word, Israel. If you ask someone what that means, a lot of people will give you a definition that's not consistent with where that word comes from. That word comes from this book. And so to really understand that word and give it a definition, you have to look at how it's defined in this book, because that's where it comes from.
Right.
It comes from this book. So if you're using a definition that's not coming from this book, then you've created another, you know, definition that's not consistent with what's in this book. The true Israelites are the people who fulfill the scriptures and fulfill the prophecies of this book.
Hmm.
That's the only correct definition of who is an Israelite, so-called Israelite. They are the people that fit the description of this book. It can't be, well, I'm an Israelite because my mom did this and my dad did this and my grandfather did this and this is what we've been doing for centuries and generations. And I mean, that's your definition of what it means, but that's not what this book is saying. This book is saying something completely different. So you've got Jewish people who believe they are Israelites because their parents were practicing this religion, their grandparents were, their great grandparents. They got this long tradition, generational tradition of practicing these religious tenets, these religious beliefs, and that's how they define it. That's what makes them think that they are the Israelites. But according to this book, the Israelites are supposed to be lost and not know their history. They're not supposed to have a record of, you know, generation upon generation upon generation of keeping this tradition, keeping that tradition. They are supposed to become scattered among the nation. They're supposed to become lost. They're supposed to worship other gods of wood and stone. They're supposed to be destroyed and not know who they are. That's what this book is saying. If you are a true Israelite, regardless of what tribe, every tribe, if you are a true Israelite, you have to have a gap, a massive gap in your knowledge of the past, of your history.
Hmm.
You're not supposed to be able to go back generation, generation, generation and say, yeah, my great grandfather was this and great 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 grandfather was that. You're not supposed to be able to do that if you are what this book is calling an Israelite.
Hmm. So
So, by that definition, there's only really one people who fit the description of what an Israelite is based on this book. and that's where that's where the problem comes in, because a lot of folks don't believe that you should just go by this book. They believe you should go by other stuff. You should go by, like I said, their family tradition, their history, their own peculiar beliefs and whatnot. But if you put that aside and just look at what this book is saying, most of the people who are calling themselves Jewish and Israelite, they are not what they claim according to this book.
Hmm. So that leads me to my next question. Who are these people? And how would you know or identify them
Like I
according to the
said,
book?
they would have to fit. They would have to have the markings that this book is talking about. This book says that these people would become scattered among the nations. They would lose their memory. They would not know their history. That's a definite curse that's mentioned in this book. They would adopt other religions. They would practice other religions, not their own anymore, but they would be adopting the religions of their host nations, the religions of their captors and whatnot. They would be worshiping gods of wood and stone. Um, they would be brought by ships. There's another mark to identify these people. They would be brought by ships from one continent to another, where they would be initially indentured servants who sold themselves, and then that would become a more permanent form of slavery, a chattel slavery, from the cradle to the grave. Um, and they would be removed from one end of the earth to the other end of the earth by a forced migration. This wouldn't be some voluntary let's pick up and move and let's go travel. This would be a forced movement, involuntary movement of people from one end of the earth to the other. And of course, when you start looking at the details like that, there's only one people who fit that description that I just gave you. I just gave you a brief summary. There's
Yeah.
only one people that fit, and those are the people who descend from the transatlantic slave trade,
Wow.
the largest forced migration in human history, from one continent to another. And no one else fits. Lots of different people were slaves. So that's not the. I'm not saying if you were, you have to have been a slave. That's not it. That's not the only thing that this book is saying. This book is saying you would be first an indentured slave. You would sell yourself into a temporary form of slavery, and then you would transition from that into chattel slavery, and that has only happened historically to one people, and that's the so-called descendants of the transatlantic slave trade. So based on that, I've narrowed it down to the only true Israelites are the ones who were forcibly brought to the Americas as indentured servants who then became chattel slaves. Those are the only people who fit the Bible's description of what an Israelite is. Now, if you're not using the Bible, you can make that word Israelite mean whatever you want. You can give it all, you can squeeze yourself in there all you want, and that's what people do. They put the Bible down and they say, well, I'm not going to use that definition, or that's not going to be my reference for what an Israelite means.
Mm.
And then you can make that word mean whatever you want it to mean. But if you're going by this book, you can't do that. It puts you in a straitjacket in terms of what that word means.
Wow.
It can't mean anything you want. It's you know you're very limited now when you go by that book. What it means, you're very, very limited.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing to come to that understanding and just really use by using the book. If you are using the book
Right.
and you come to that understanding, you can see that basically what you're saying is true. I have the privilege of watching a lot of your videos. I watch all of your videos. Actually, can't wait new stuff. I watch all your videos. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, if you're just joining us, we're talking with the Ravenous Bird, who's on trial today. And if you have not caught this episode in its from its beginning, you got to go back after we done and go watch it again, because there's just a lot to for you, a lot of information for you to unravel here, and because there's some choices that you're gonna have to make if we do have a knowing that we have a man from the Creator who is leading his lost people back to the fold of a true understanding of who he is. All right, so let's talk about these lost people. So now we identify that these lost people are those who can trace their lineage through the Atlantic slave trade. Where are they, and what are they supposed to be doing at this moment of time?
Well, the majority of them are supposed to stay lost and stay
Hold
assimilated.
on, hold on. They're supposed to stay lost.
Yeah,
Explain.
yeah. The majority of them are not supposed to ever recover what was lost. They're supposed to stay assimilated, stay lost. Stay drifting and not really know who they are. That's another description of the people of this book, is that the majority of them will not return. Only a small remnant would return
Mm.
and reclaim their lost heritage. Only a few would do that, not the whole. The masses would not do that. The masses would simply melt in with the societies where they live, and that's the sad reality. That's what this book is saying, and we don't
Wow.
see that with, like I said, we don't see that with every people. We only see it with one people.
Wow. Do you have scriptures? Is there any scriptures that you can just throw out there that can just, for those who are listening, that because I'm pretty certain that some people are listening now and they're going, what the hell? Is this true? And they would
Yeah,
like to research.
there's lots of them. There's one in particular that folks can read, is in Yeshayahu, that's so-called book of Isaiah, in chapter 10, where it talks about the Assyrian threat at that time, but it uses the Assyrian invasion of the 8th century to talk about something more futuristic, more distant in the future. And in that chapter, it says that the people of Israel would be like the sand of the sea, innumerable. When you go to the beach and you see all the sand, if someone told you to count those up, you'd be like, that's impossible. It would take me forever to sit here and count each grain of sand. And that's an exaggeration of how numerous the people would be in the world. They would be very, very numerous. But that chapter goes on to say that only a remnant would return and the rest would be annihilated. They would be destroyed.
Mm.
So a remnant would be a small sample of that, and then the rest of it would be wiped out, destroyed. That's in
Where
Isaiah chapter 7.
Go ahead. That's where would they be returning and why? Because when you say return, that means they got to leave. They got to leave where they are to come to someplace. Where and why do you
Well,
believe that?
they would make the return mentally first, right? Before they do anything physically, they would have to mentally awaken to, okay, this is who I am. This is who my true identity, and this is the name of my supreme being. This is who my ancestors used to worship. They would return to him, and they would begin to call on his name and begin to, reacquaint themselves with him and find out, what does he require of them? What haven't they been doing that they should be doing? And then once they go through that, interview and that process of learning about their history and learning about their true religion, then yes, they would have to. Uh, the next step would be, okay, you are not where you're supposed to be. You are a descendant of slaves, and that was the wrath of the higher power fulfilling his promise of the curses, and that's what brought you to the land you are now, and that's not where you're supposed to be. So they would begin to question and begin to think, Why am I still here? What am I doing here? This is not where I'm supposed to be. Is there somewhere else I'm supposed to go? And then they would find that, yes, there is a place where you're supposed to go. He has created, or he has prepared a place for his remnant to go, where he will begin to reconstitute and rebuild his nation again. And that's also my work here in the Philippines, is to point out where that place is, and to lead people to that place, and to begin the work of nation building.
Mm. Now, why is that important? Is there a doomsday or a rapture or something? People believe that there's going to be a rapture and the Messiah is coming back. And if that is true, if the Messiah is coming back, why do we need to go to a place? What would you say to those people? That's one
Well,
question.
before we get into all that New Testament stuff, the scriptures tell us that when these people who have been cursed to lose their memory, lose their language, lose their religion, adopt other languages, and all that stuff, and be moved from one end of the earth to the other, when they begin to wake up and realize what's happened to them, they would uh, realize that they need to leave the place where they've been brought, and they would
Mm.
have to gather themselves somewhere else and start to rebuild themselves, and uh, strengthen themselves as a nation. They can't stay where they are and do it, because the lands where they are was meant for their punishment. So anything they try to do in those lands will ultimately fail. That's not why they were brought there. They were not brought there to be improved, or to be prosperous, and all that. They were brought there to be oppressed, and as long as they stay in those lands, that will always be the case. They will always be under some sort of oppression. So what they need to do is leave and go someplace where their higher power has told them to go, where they can now be free to rebuild themselves. And that's the scriptures call it in Exodus. It's really the second Exodus. They were the first Exodus under Moses, and then there's supposed to be another Exodus in the end times. And just like in the first Exodus, they went from Egypt to a wilderness, and they didn't go straight to the promised land. They went to a wilderness first. Same thing here. The second time around, there's to be an exodus from the lands of their captivity to a wilderness. And while they're in that wilderness, they will reclaim their heritage and rebuild themselves and strengthen themselves. And then once they're done there, then they go back to their true homeland. That's the stages of this rebuilding of the nation. That's how the scriptures define it. So
Mm.
the New Testament doesn't tell you that, because the New Testament is trying to lead you to a different God.
Whoa. All right. Let's talk about that a little bit. Different God. Isn't the New Testament part of the Bible? Are there not 66 books in the Bible and they're all one?
It's that was made, though. That was put together by people. That wasn't put together by prophets. No prophet of Yahweh put this book together like it is now. That was done by a committee of church people. Uh, and so we don't recognize that as a legitimate collection of books. That collection of books is a man-made collection of books, and they are very, very opposed to one another. The New Testament is attacking the Old, and vice versa. They don't say the same thing. They are not at harmony, but the church put them in the same binder, ignoring that. And what you have is this, contradiction after contradiction after contradiction, where the church just expects you to overlook these things and accept by faith what they're telling you is true, and they're asking you not think critically, to suspend your brain power, and to stop thinking critically and just accept what they tell you. And that has never worked for me. That's why I was never really comfortable in any church, because they're asking you to stop thinking and just trust
Mm.
what the spirit is telling the pastor or telling the preacher or whatever. And they, just trust by faith that what they're saying is true. Yet when you read this book, it's very different than what they're saying. So the New Testament is not the scripture for us because it's telling you something completely different than what Moses told the people.
Okay. So I guess asking you a question about the Trinity would be out because we don't adhere to the New Testament. Is there any part of like, is there a difference? All right, let me ask it the question this way: Is there a Messiah? Is there a Messiah? Because we learn a lot
The
about
word
the.
Messiah is it just means anointed one, and there's many messiahs. It's not there was never just one person, the Messiah. Okay, the prophets were all messiahs; they were anointed. The high priest was a messiah. The kings who sat on the throne of David, they were messiahs; they were anointed. So that word, Christians have made it like, oh, this is one person, and he's divine, the Messiah. But that's not what that word means.
Mm,
Many people can be a Messiah, not just one person. And the Messiah was never a deity. Messiah was a man, a human being, never a deity. But Christians have made it a deity. They've taken the
mm,
word and they've bastardized it and they've misinterpreted it to be this is a divine person, someone who's from heaven, a deity. And that's not true. That's a lie.
mm. All right. So that's powerful, man. So we're talking about this anointed one. What is his name?
Which
Because
one?
I'm because the one that they mistakenly called Jesus. Because I've done my own research and realized Jesus could never be the one. And when you look at the historical evidence of the Jesus character, he's definitely did not went through the transatlantic slave trade. Well, he wouldn't have, but he doesn't have that characteristic. So the one that they mistakenly called Jesus, what is his name? And
His name is not uncommon. It's been mentioned before. Other people have had that name, and the way I pronounce it is Yaoshai. Yaoshai. Other folks would say it's Yeshua or Jesus or um, Isa. They've got different pronunciations for it. But like I said, biblical Hebrew, the way I would pronounce his name would be Yaoshai. Yaoshai. And it simply
awesome.
means Yahweh is the Savior or Yahweh saves. So his name doesn't even talk about himself. His name doesn't describe himself. His name is describing the creator that he worships. Yahweh is the Savior. Yahweh saves, not him. The name doesn't describe him. It describes the higher power that he serves. And like I said, there are other people in the Bible with that same name. Joshua, his name is Yaoshai. The high priest in the scriptures at the end of the exile, his name was Yaoshai. There were other folks with that name. So it's not some special name that only one person's ever had. It was a fairly common name, and it simply means that Yahweh is the Savior. Yahweh saves.
Hmm. There's so much more to unlock on this, but we're not going to spend time there because if you want to hear more on that, go and watch the Ravenous Bird on YouTube. He has a three-part series that is dedicated to the name Yahoo, and he extensively talk about Yahushai and the name there. So you want to go see that? Go to the Ravenous Bird page. Don't forget to like and subscribe, okay? Because we want to send the algorithm way up so that we can have more of our people who are trapped. Now we know that not many are going to make it. Many are not going to listen, as we heard that a lot is going to be destroyed. But for those who hear, those who have an ear to hear, let them hear. All right, Doomsday, because I want to get into some prophecy with you. You clearly is a man accredited by Yahweh. If anybody's listening to how you talk, you have not once yet drawn anyone to yourself so far that in this interview. You have always speaking of the book, you're speaking of Yahoo, and you're speaking of your experience with the name and etc. and your work that you're doing. Tell us a little bit about your work here, and then once you get into the work, I want to get into the end time prophecy or doomsday, because is there a doomsday? But tell us a little bit about your work here.
My work is to proclaim the name first and foremost, to make sure that the name is reproclaimed and the record is set straight as to, you know, what that name is, how it's pronounced. That's been my primary work. But I know what the scriptures say. The scriptures say that the man who does that, the man who reintroduces the name after centuries of it being obscured and not really known and not really being used and spoken, the man who comes to reintroduce that name will also be the man who triggers this exodus that I just told you about.
Aye.
He would be the one to um, lead a movement of the remnant from the lands of their captors to the wilderness, because the man who reintroduces the name will do it from the wilderness. That's what the scriptures say, that he would be a voice crying in the wilderness, uh, you know, calling for people to um, return to Yahweh and keep his covenant and all of that. He would do that from the wilderness, and this wilderness will be located in the far east. That's why the ravenous bird, that's where that ravenous bird comes in. He is the man of the counsel of Yahweh, and he works from the east, from the far east where the sun rises. Why is he way over there? Because that's where he wants the remnant to go. He wants the remnant to follow this man to this place where they can now work on themselves and rebuild their nation. They can't do it in the lands where they were brought to be slaves, because that land is designed to, always oppress them and punish them and knock down whatever they attempt to build. And we have a long track record history of that being the case. Every time black people have tried to uh, come together and improve themselves, it's been destroyed, or it's been corrupted and circumvented by the people who, you know, used to own us as slaves. So if it could have been done, it would have been done by now. We had so many examples of in our history where it looked like it was about to succeed and then it was destroyed. Black Wall Street and many other examples of you know um, black people trying to lift themselves up. So it's not something that can be done in those lands. And that's by design. Yahweh is making sure that we don't prosper as a people. Individually, we can get success, but as a people, we do not succeed. We take one step forward, it's two steps back. And so, for the remnant to be successful, they have to leave that land. They have to go somewhere else where they don't have a stigma of slavery and racism and oppression. They have to go somewhere where the land is more acceptable and conducive to their um, they're rebuilding themselves, and that's what the wilderness is for. The wilderness is for them to isolate themselves, to get away from all the stigma and the history and the baggage that they carry in these lands, and to be someplace where now they can relax, they can breathe, they can let their hair down and get to work on building themselves up. And that's what the scriptures say would happen once this name is reintroduced. The name would trigger this movement of people to leave where they are, leave the lands where they've been brought, their ancestors were brought by slaves, and to gather themselves in a place where they can rebuild their nation, rebuild their relationship with their Creator, rebuild their standing with Him, and uh, reignite and um, restore the covenant that they had with Him and keep His commandments. That's what the wilderness is for.
Wow, amazing, man, amazing, amazing. Um, is there a prophecy on this? Is there a prophecy on the time of the Exodus for our people?
In Yeshayahu, or Isaiah, as he's called, chapter 41, verse 25, it mentions, like I said, the man who would be someone from the north. He would be born in a northern country, but then he would relocate to the far east to proclaim this name. That's in Isaiah chapter 41, verse 25. And that whole chapter is talking about this movement of people to the east where this man is proclaiming the name, and why they need to go there, why they need to go to the east where this man is. That's Isaiah chapter 41. If you go to the book of Mechayao, otherwise known as Micah, and you look at chapter 2, verse 13, that also tells you that there would be a movement of people following a man to a place where he has already gone ahead of them, and that the tribes, the remnant, would reconstitute themselves there under this man's leadership. So that's two prophecies right there. There's another one um, in Yeshaya or Isaiah chapter uh, 25, and it's verses 14, 15, and 16, those three verses there, where the commandment is given to the remnant that they must go to the islands of the east in the sea and praise the name and glorify the name Yahweh there. So this is not a suggestion. This is an order. And of course, this order can't be fulfilled until folks wake up and realize who they are. And like I said, reacquaint themselves with their creator and find out what it is that they're supposed to be doing. What does he expect them to be doing? And when they come across that verse and the others I just told you about, they know, okay, I'm supposed to leave this place and get the hell out of here and go to the wilderness where this man is proclaiming the true name. That's what they're supposed to do. And that the time frame is by, like I said, when this man begins to preach the true name from the east. From the east. Now, every name you've heard, Yahweh, Jehovah, all those names come from the west. All of them. They were proclaimed by people in the west. Yahweh was proclaimed by a German scholar in Germany. That's west. Yahuwah, that was proclaimed by Stephen Pidgeon, the author or the publisher of the Sefer Bible. That was also in the west. Yahweh, that's also coming from the west. These names, even Jesus, that's an anglicized version, that's coming from the west, from Europe. Okay, none of these names were proclaimed in their pristine state, as I would put it, from the east. No one proclaimed these names from the east and it spread to the west. They were already in the west. That's where they were proclaimed from, in the west. So the Bible is already telling you that these names are wrong, based on where they originated, where they started. The true name has to be proclaimed from a man who is from a northern country, a northern land, who relocates to the east, the far east. And then that name would spread from the east to the west, and it would trigger a movement of people. It would trigger a movement that I've been talking to you about, of folks who awaken and said, "Oh, wait a minute, I am a so-called Israelite, and I don't belong here. I was brought here under a curse. My ancestors were brought here because of a curse through disobedience of the covenant, and I don't want to be in disobedience. I want to do what's right. I want to please. I want to do what the Creator wants me to do." And then He gives you a roadmap. He gives you a set of instructions on what to do. But it starts with the name, and when that name was proclaimed, that's when all these other things will begin to happen, and that's exactly what has happened since I began proclaiming this name in 2017.
We know that the majority of the lost people are going to still stay lost. So will there be a million man march, maybe 100,000, 200,000 people that just moving out of these countries to the Far East? Or what are your take on the people coming here? How is it supposed to, or is there a
Yeah,
prophecy?
the modern day Exodus is not supposed to be millions of people at one time. It's supposed to be a few people at a time. The scriptures tell us in Yeram Ya'o, aka Jeremiah, chapter 3, verse 14, that it would be one of a family, two of a city. It would be a few people at a time, not a massive movement like the first Exodus was 600,000 plus all in one day. That's not how it's going to be in this modern Exodus. This modern Exodus is only going to be a few people at a time, a small number of people at a time. And it would be basically it would be a selective process where the creator is not just grabbing handfuls of people, but he's selectively picking and choosing who he wants to bring. He's not going to bring everybody because we saw how that worked the first time around. Everybody he brought out in the first Exodus, he killed in the wilderness. Those folks all had to die because they were not righteous people. They should have stayed in Mitzrayim. They should have stayed in Egypt. This time around, he's not doing it that way. He's only picking the people who really have a heart to serve him, and the rest he's ignoring. He's discarding the rest.
Wow. So for those who are watching, if you're hearing from the ravenous bird, the man himself, the man we know and believe to be the ravenous bird from Isaiah, from the book of Isaiah 46 and verse 11, the man who is called by the Creator to execute His counsel from a far country, from the far country right here. He has purposed it. He will also do it. This is not a joke. We title this one "The Ravenous Bird on Trial." He's not really on trial. We're just putting it out there for those who are hearing for the first time. I see user 159637007B6951. I see you just said you've never heard any of this stuff. I know it sound crazy because you've been in the dark for so long. But now you have the light that has been shining up on you. So I expect you to go to the Ravenous Bird page and go look up Leave on Wings. Leave on Wings. Leave on Wings, gentlemen. Because there's a deadline, there's a time. But we're not here to give you a time prophecy. I'm just telling you that there's a deadline. And we're gonna ask the Ravenous Bird the next question about that because all my life I know and heard that there would be a doomsday, that the end of the world is coming upon us. And there have been so many predictions about when that is going to happen. And we see from all these predictions, it still haven't happened yet. So now let me just revert this question to the Ravenous Bird. Is there a deadline for people to be leaving these countries? And if so, what is that deadline or time frame? I don't like to use deadline, but time frame.
All right. Well, number one, I don't. I'm not teaching an end of the world scenario. That's not what I teach. What I teach is that what the scriptures tell us is that the world will begin to go through a major transformation, a very difficult period where there be natural disasters and uh, things happening in the weather, very very atypical stuff. They would cause massive destruction and massive losses of life. But the world won't end. It simply is going to be significantly changed. Um, and one of the reasons why the Creator is extracting His remnant and bringing them to the wilderness is because that's the place where they need to go to be safe from these destructions that's going to happen.
Hmm.
So the world is going to go through massive changes, geographical changes. The literal typography of the world is going to be disfigured by massive earthquakes, massive tsunamis, hurricanes, unprecedented hurricane, all types of crazy weather-related incidents are going to transform this world and cause massive losses, massive loss of life. But the one place where the people can be saved from this destruction is the wilderness. So that's one of the reasons why the scripture says the woman has to flee to the wilderness. So as far as the timeline is concerned, when the name was revealed to me by the Creator, like I said, that's when everything changed. I realized that okay, this name doesn't just come back to sit on a shelf and people just can look at it and go about their life. This name is going to set in motion events that will change the world. It has to be that important. If this is really His name and now it's being reintroduced to the world, it's going to trigger a major transformation of the world. That's what the true name is supposed to do. The true name is not supposed to come back and just sit among its peers or as one of many choices people could choose, right? Oh, you can call them this or you can call them that. You can call them Jehovah. Oh yeah, and if you want to, you can call them Yah. Oh, it's supposed to come back and destroy, decimate all these other names. It's supposed to come back and be a antagonist to these other names because they're not right. And it's supposed to, like I said, trigger a movement of people to flee to the wilderness. Well, they will be protected from the destruction that is going to happen to the world subsequent to the return of this name.
Wow. So is there a wrath of the creator? Because we hear this a lot, back in our religion, prospective religion, there's a wrath of the creator upon this world. Is that what's happening at that time frame, or is it like you said, you don't teach end time scenario? So is there a wrath of Yahweh, a
Yeah,
wrath of
there
the
is, there
creator?
is wrath. Um, like I said, he has a photographic memory, and he keeps track of things that's happened even centuries ago that we don't even remember. He keeps track of things. So there is a reckoning that's going to take place. There's a reckoning for the wrong, the evil that was done to his people, why they were scattered among the nations and oppressed and whatnot. Even though he caused that as punishment, he's still going to punish the ones he used to inflict those curses. He's not going to let them off the hook. And so that's what we mean by saying there's going to be a judgment. He's going to turn his wrath away from his people, the ones who he's been punishing by these curses, and then turn his wrath from them to the ones that he was using to oppress them.
Mm,
And number one on that list would be the United States of America. That's the nation that's the strongest nation in the world, that's had us in captivity the longest, and has the most notorious track record of our enslavement. So they are number one on the list to be destroyed. And I'm not the only person who said that. Many pastors, and they can read the handwriting on the wall that if the Creator does not judge America, He would have to give Sodom and Gomorrah an apology.
yeah, I heard that
So
before.
everyone has a sense that this country is doomed. This country is headed towards a climactic fall. Everyone has that sense that this is not going to go on forever. There's going to be a judgment day for this country, just like there's been judgment days for every empire of the past. Why would America be any different from Rome or Greece or Assyria or Babylon? All these nations that rose to world dominance came to a crashing, they ended. So why would America just be allowed to continue on ad infinitum? It's not. People have, this feeling that this is not going to go on forever. It's going to end, and it's not going to end in a very pretty way. It's going to be, very, very destructive. So, and that is what the scriptures are saying. The scriptures call it Babylon because in the ancient world, Babylon was the supreme power of that day. So
Mm,
it calls the future supreme power, the one that will be ruling in the end times, it calls it Babylon because it simply has inherited the moniker of being the world's superpower of modern times. So the modern superpower is the United States of America, and that is the modern day Babylon, the modern day Assyria, the modern day Egypt, the modern day nation that has the most blood on its hands and the most, you know, reckoning that it needs to repay for the evil that's done to people. So the name has come back at a time to let people know that that judgment is about to happen. The name
mm,
is coming back to alert people um, that it's almost time for the chickens to come home to roost, so to speak.
right, right. So this Exodus, we know it's not going to be a million man march or a massive load of people, but is there a time frame between say now and 10 years from now? Is there a time frame that people should be leaving? Are those who Yahweh put on their hearts to understand this truth?
No, it would take me a while to really go through it with the scripture, but basically, in a nutshell, once the name returns and that triggers the exodus of people to begin to leave, once that exodus is done and all the people that have been selected by Yahweh to be gathered, once they've been gathered, right, and they've been taken out of that land, there's nothing else about that land that's worth saving,
Hmm.
right? It's just like in the days of Lot and his family. The angel said, "You got to leave the city. We can't do anything while you're here. Why? Because I'm not going to destroy it if there's good people here. You have to leave, get out." And then once they left, they destroyed that place. So once the Exodus, this modern day Exodus, is over, and it will be over this year. It's not going to go on forever. He's not going to. He's like I said. He's not collecting millions of people. It's only a small remnant of people that he's collecting. Once that is over, and he's collected the people that he wants to bring to the wilderness, then you can expect the judgment to fall on on that country.
So you mentioned that it's going to be over this year.
Yeah, the Exodus, the official Exodus began last year, and it's about to wind up this year.
Wow. So
So I'm not telling folks the world is going to end. It's not going to end, but there's going to be some very, very, very serious judgments that happen to the world, and the world will begin to change dramatically from now on. If this is his name, and if these people who are making this move to the other side of the world are the remnant that this book is talking about, if all these things are in line with the scriptures, then the next thing on the horizon, the next event that we can expect is for the destruction of Babylon. That's on the horizon. That's what's up next. And so there isn't much time. But like I said, this isn't the end of the world. This is simply, the end of an empire, so to speak. The world will continue on, but it will be very different.
wow, this is powerful. I've never heard anyone speak the way you speak, and actually understand prophecies or the written word the way you speak. I remember back in the days when I was a Seventh Day Adventist, there was this big Millerite movement on the basic doomsday, basically the end of the time when it's supposed to be in 1844, 1843, and then they went back. And when he didn't, when the Messiah didn't come, they went back and recalculate and realized they didn't carry the O, and it's supposed to be 1844. And then next thing you know, boom, that never happened. And so it's actually in the history books as the Great Depression. It was a terrible time for the world because people believed the lie. And so we're looking forward to see this great destruction. We're seeing it already. I mean, if you look around the world and look at the things that are happening, the earthquakes, the tsunamis, the hurricanes, they're happening more on a frequency than it was in the past. So we can see that. We just saw what's that? Barrel, I think. Barrel fly through the Caribbean islands and devastate Jamaica. So Yahweh is giving his people opportunity to hear what you guys are hearing right now. And this is your time. This is your time to act. It's really up to you, because at the end of the day, he's going to shut the ears of those who we don't want to hear, and he's going to open the ears of those who are obedient and ready. I want to take this time right here to just open up for some questions. I asked a lot of questions, and I could keep him here for another hour because I know he could answer every question I asked, but that's not the point. The point here, ladies and gentlemen, is to give you the opportunity to hear for yourself. Sometimes someone can send you how many of you have books that you bought that you thought was interesting. You bought the book, you took it home, and you put it in your library. You never read it, or it might be still right there on your coffee table. You've never read it. Or about tapes or CDs that you bought, you've never played it. One thing I've learned about information, it's the right information that's going to actually set you free. And if you never act upon it, then that information is worthless. So you heard it here. And I wanted to do this interview to give you an opportunity to hear from the man himself. Now, this is your time. I want to give you the opportunity to ask some questions. I do. I'm actually using this phone here for Instagram, so you can't call in. It would be nice to hear your voice. I'm working on that. I actually have another phone here, but I didn't connect it up. It'll probably take me a little time to connect it. but you can type your comment. You can type your questions in the comments. Type your questions in the comments. And oh, my wife is giving me some juice. Look at that. Thank you, my love. Thank you. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, man. All right. So, uh, okay, hold on for a second here. Let's see if any questions come up. Will our numbers grow? So, all right. So, Ken Dazel asks, will our numbers grow when settled in Madbar? Will our numbers grow when settled in Madbar? That's a question for you, Mr. Bird.
Yeah, the numbers will explode once the settlement has been established. Like I said, once the Exodus is over, that remnant will be blessed and it will begin to grow and multiply exponentially. So it'll start small. That's what the scriptures tell us. If you look at Yeshayahu or Isaiah um, chapter 60, in verse 22, it says, "The little one shall become thousands, a small one shall become a strong nation, and Yahweh will hasten it or speed it up in his time." So it's telling us that, yeah, you will start small in the wilderness, but you will not stay small. You will explode. Your numbers will explode.
Awesome. Next question for you here. Will we live on hard Theon when the tabernacle is built? Basically, will we live in the same place where the tabernacle is
I
built?
will. I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay in that tabernacle for the rest of my life. I'm not going to leave it. If it's up to me, I will never leave it. But yeah,
Awesome.
the answer is that we will live in the same proximity, as that will be obviously the focus, the center of our life is his house, and we will be charged with maintaining his house and make sure it has what it needs to function every single day. That's the purpose of, why does he create a nation? Why does he want there to be a nation? So this nation can serve him and do those things that he wants. And one of the primary reasons that he made us a nation is so that he can have a house amongst us and dwell amongst us, walk amongst us. And of course, you can imagine a king of his status, he will have rules and protocols that you must follow to have that privilege of him walking among you. You just can't, expect him not to have any rules, protocols, or statutes. And I'm more than willing to fulfill each and every one of them to have his presence right next door to my house. That would be, you know, the reason for living. No other reason would be greater than that to have. So I'm not, uh, I'm not planning to live anywhere else. But I don't know about the rest of you.
Oh, I'm right there with you, Brian. I'm a Loy. All right. I'm right there with you. I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Uh, you are watching TMB Truth Matters Broadcasting. All right, all right. We have another question here. Next question. Can you ask Mabane to explain the difference between the ancient Hebrew people calendar, the Julian calendar, the Gregorian calendar, and how it's distort the biblical event from the past to present?
All right. Well, no calendar distorts the Bible. It may distort your understanding of the Bible, but no calendar is actually changing anything in the Bible. Um, it's simply affecting or changing your understanding and making you think something that's not true. But it's not. None of these things impinge or uh, affect uh, biblical statements and claims. Basically, the modern Jewish calendar is the old Babylonian lunar calendar. It's the same calendar that the Babylonians used, which goes by lunar cycle. The Gregorian calendar is a schematic calendar that uh, basically is a revision of the Julian calendar. The Julian calendar before that was 365 days, and it didn't adjust for the buildup of one day every 4 years. There would be a buildup, and you would have to insert a leap year. So the Gregorian calendar fixed that error by creating a leap year every 4 years. There's an extra day inserted into the calendar, so you have 366 days instead of 365. So the true length of a year, which is what all these calendars are trying to stay in line with, the true length of a year is 365 days and a quarter. That's the true length for the sun to move from one spot on the ecliptic and return to that same spot, or return to the same time of the season. That if you start the year in the spring, it's going to take 365 and a quarter to return to that same point in the season again. So that's because there's a fraction involved. Human calendars can't really mimic that. It has to be a whole number. So the Gregorian calendar is a whole number, 365. And because it doesn't mimic 365 and a quarter, that means every 4 years it's running ahead one day.
Hold on
So
for
if you don't adjust for that, that calendar will begin to move out of alignment with the seasons. So the Gregorian calendar tackles that problem by inserting one day every 4 years to slow the calendar down. The lunar calendar does that by every 3 or 6 years, they add a whole month, and it slows the calendar down by adding a whole month of 29 or 30 days to keep the calendar in line with the seasons. And that's the Jewish calendar. The biblical calendar is also adjusting for that fraction, but it does it by units of 7 days, not one day. And so every 7 years, the biblical year is 364 days. That's a year divisible by seven. 7 by 52 would give you 364. But because it's one day and a quarter short than the true solar year, that means that every 7 years it's actually falling ahead or running ahead a whole week. So what the biblical calendar, and this is evidence, this is not me just saying this, what the biblical calendar will do is every 7 years it will insert a whole week of 7 days into the calendar to adjust it to make it stay in line with the seasons. And that's the calendar that we use in our nation,
all
the
right.
biblical calendar.
Hold on. I got another question for you. But I think this box is running out of juice. Hold on for a second. Let me get it. Let me get it charged up. Because you
I
were
see
back.
one question here. If the U.S. is not destroyed in 2025 or later, what does that mean regarding the name and the movie? Yeah, I've always said, and I've been speaking prophecy in His name since I started, and I've always said a true prophet is not 80% right or 90% right. He has to be 100% right. If he's speaking in the name of the true higher power, then none of his words will fall to the ground. They will all be true. So if I'm telling you that America is headed for a great day of reckoning and destruction, and that doesn't happen, then I am a false prophet, and his name is not Yahweh, and this movement is basically invalid. I've always said that. I've never came out and said, no, we're just gonna tweak this and change that and keep going. No, we that's not how it works. Right? A prophet who says something and it doesn't happen in the name of the higher power that he calls upon, that man is a false prophet, and everything he teaches you can dismiss
Thank you.
and go on and find something else to do.
Oh, it was buffering. That's why. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. All right. So you can see the questions, my man.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome.
Is this a jubilee? Yeah, this is the jubilee year. This is the 50th year, first year of a new cycle. Sounds like an invasive species on a long-term planning session. I don't know what that is.
I know it's just somebody. You know. They always one or two, right?
That's a A discombobulated sentence with no structure. Are we commanded by the Creator to warn our family about the dangers that are ahead, even though we know they will not listen? Yeah, if you know they're not going to listen, you're wasting your words. But if you believe it's possible that they might want to listen, then yeah, you share it. Uh, yeah, that's all I can see as far as
Okay.
questions.
Let me see here if anybody. So this is your opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to ask some questions for the Ravenous Bird. Let me go on to TikTok here and see if anybody's asking question here. Um, yeah. Oh man, there's so much here. Not question, but so much people on. All right. Anybody? 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 Okay. Wait, let's see. Let's see Instagram.
Ashkenazi Jews do not say the name, so it's impossible to know what they think his name is. Because if you ask them, they'll say they don't. They never pronounce his name. I think some of them might know. If the ones who are really educated and do their research, they might know. But like I said, they're not allowed to utter the name, so you're not going to get a straight answer from a practicing Ashkenazi Jew. What does it mean? No, it doesn't say Knock uncovered himself. This is what I'm talking about. That's a translation that's making you think that, but it doesn't say that in the source language that Knock Noah uncovered himself. It doesn't say that. That's the problem when you read a translation and you can't fact check that translation and see if it's accurate. It's not. It doesn't say that he uncovered himself. Will the commanding general Yohana be teaming up with Ra? No, I don't. I don't see that happening.
Who's that commanding general?
The leader of the ISUPK Christian Israelite movement. That's his name, Yohana.
Oh, he not coming here because if he come here, he'd have to take a back seat.
Yeah, he'd have to denounce everything he's teaching.
Exactly. He would have to let the people know he'd been lying to them all these years,
Yeah,
and and that
and
eh,
pride won't let you do that.
yep, and that Yahweh never spoke to him because if you notice, he's gathering people and they're all in the same areas of wherever his congregation is. And
Yeah,
besides, the whole movement too is a 503(c) or 501(c), or something like that. So
yeah.
the
They're,
whole
they're a registered 501c,
yeah,
501c.
so they're government entity, and they are actually registered as Muslim. If you
No,
look
no,
at
that's the IUIC branch.
oh, okay,
They are registered as Muslim.
yeah,
I don't know
oh,
what the ISUPK registered as. They might just be a Christian church under
yeah.
the name of a Christian church.
Uh, all right. There's a question here from Leroy White. He said I
And
could
other
mention it.
nationalities, yeah, the strangers are accepted if as long as they accept our doctrine and they can join us. That's no problem. The law tells us to accept the stranger who wants to convert, so that's not a problem.
Yeah, that's a good question too. That's a very very good question. Here's a question from Leroy White. He said, "For those who believe in what you're teaching, where should they start?" Basically asking, what should they do? What should they do?
Where should they start? I don't.
Basically, like I think I understand the question. You've been a Christian. Let's say you've been a Christian your whole life. Now you're hearing this information. Now, what do you do now? What do you do? Where do you go from here?
Well, I tell folks that if you really want to understand this book, you have to learn the language of the book. So you start there. For some folk, that's too daunting of a task. They don't believe it's possible and it's too much effort. But it's not that hard. If it's something you really want to do, it's easy, and you make time every day to do it. So for folks who are just coming in, I don't want anyone to just listen to me and take my word for something. You need to be informed and take the time to be informed by studying. And what you should do is begin to learn biblical Hebrew. Learn
Mm,
biblical Hebrew so that you can read this book for yourself. And you don't have to take somebody's word for it. You have to take this translation says this translation says that. I don't need a translation because I can read it for myself. And that's where you want to be. You want to be in a place where you can read this book for yourself. You don't need anybody else to tell you what it says. You can read it for yourself. That's where I want folks to start.
awesome. This lady on our user 15963 something something asked the question. He said, "You said people are already moving to the wilderness. Where is the wilderness located?"
Okay, the wilderness is the easiest definition is that the wilderness is the place where the name was reintroduced, and that would be Philippines and specifically the island of Cebu. That's where the name was reintroduced by me. That's where I began to proclaim this name was Cebu, Philippines, and that's where people are moving. They are gathering here by the hundreds. Our no, excuse me, our numbers are in the hundreds, and it likely will be in the triple digits, 300. But they're moving here by the hundreds because that's where the name was reintroduced from. So, folks, a lot of folks say, well, the wilderness is over here, the wilderness is in Ghana, the wilderness is in Jordan, the wilderness is in, these different places. And they ask me, how do you know your wilderness is the correct location? I said, the wilderness is defined by that place where the name is reintroduced. The true name is proclaimed from the wilderness. And that's the place that you need to go. So if you're going to Ghana, what's in Ghana? Was the true name reintroduced from Ghana? No. Was it reintroduced from Jordan or Egypt or folks are moving to some folks are going to Alaska. I mean, what the heck's was the name reintroduced from Alaska? No. Why are you going there then? Well, it's a wilderness. So what? I mean, there are many wildernesses, but you're looking for the one where the name was reproclaimed, like I said, according to Isaiah 41 and 25. That's the definition of the where the true wilderness is Isaiah 41:25 and Isaiah 24 and 15. Those are your scriptures, the main ones that tell you how to identify the correct location of the wilderness.
Mm, awesome. Uh, Ken Diesel said, "Is this year a jubilee year?"
Yeah, I told him already that it
Oh,
is.
you did it already. Okay, okay. How far down did you go? I had to step out because I needed to get this speaker charged up. How far down did you go? The verb. He's asking some other question here. The verb gahal
He's
means to.
quoting. It looks like he's copy pasting something I wrote.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's
Uh,
asking a lot of questions. This guy, oh, this is Yakar Yao, Ban God. All these questions I'm asking are coming from people I know. Okay. Can others, can other nationalities
yeah, I
be?
just told him. Yes, they can.
Oh, okay. All right, good. So you're seeing those.
Yeah, so
Where are you seeing it from? Facebook or YouTube?
it's on your it's
Oh,
on your
oh,
page.
connected.
But I don't see all of them. I only see a few of them. Like I think you see more than me.
Okay. I'm trying to access the Facebook. I think I have this on private chat. Let me see if I could put something in there and see if people can see it. Comment here. Then we come to a close. Let's see. There's another way to see it, but I think I need another outlet. I'm trying to go on this other side here to see if I can access all the message from this other computer, but for some reason I'm not getting the live feed. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm not getting the live feed. Let's see. Let me try. try another thing here. You are watching TMB, Truth Matters Broadcasting. Yep. Let's see if we can log it right here and see if I could access any more message because I'm not getting any. The message is not coming through the Facebook feed for some reason, and I'm thinking on this it
I
should. It
see.
should
I see the a question about the verb gala, and the question was Knock was not uncovered by someone else. He was drunk and was uncovered himself. That's the correct rendition. The English makes it look like his son went in there and uncovered him and exposed him, but that's not what happened. He was drunk and he was simply naked on his own accord in his tent. Not that his son went in there and did something freaky to him while he was drunk. Are there any digital versions of Thor? No, I didn't make any digital versions because I didn't want folks to take my work and claim it as their own. So I don't have any digital PDFs. You can buy the book if you're in another country, or if you come here, the book is free. The only reason I charge it is if I have to ship it to another country. That I don't know that costs money. But if you're here in the country, it's free. Everything's free if you're here.
all right. I don't see any other question. You see any other question came in?
If you're wrong, the worst thing is that I live in a tropical island eating good. That's true. If you're right, that's yeah, that's true. If I'm wrong, look where you are. You're in a paradise, and the cost of living is cheap, and it's not a bad place to be. So yeah, look at it that way. But no, seriously though, if I'm wrong, then everything I teach, I'm not gonna stand by it because that's not how it's supposed to work for a true prophet. A true prophet, when he speaks in that name, he cannot speak presumptuously. He must know that
Exactly.
he's saying the word of the Creator exactly as he's supposed to say it. And it can't be 30% right or 50% right. It has to be 100% right. And I hold myself to that same standard because a lot of folks claim to be prophets and they say something that's going to happen. It doesn't happen, and they just modify it and move on like nothing happened. That's what these groups do. They stay in business, and and they keep their followers because they just tweak something or change something, and they say, oh well, that was wrong, but we're going to get it right this time, and they that's not how a true that's not what we see in this book. It's not what we see in this book. Are we able to buy things on Shabbat? Yeah, if it's something necessary, as long as we're not making one of our people who are under the covenant do the work, it's fine. Like for example, say you run out of milk for the baby, right? The baby's crying. You don't make the baby suffer through the day because you forgot or you didn't weren't able to get enough milk. You can run out to the store real quick and buy some milk, right? That's fine. But you don't buy it from one of us. You don't make one of us do the transaction because that would make you know one of our people break the law. But if it's a stranger, someone who doesn't keep our laws and they don't know anything about what we're doing, that's fine. You can get that item from them and take care of that need. You're not breaking the commandments to do that. Is the seven virgins more correct? Yeah. Why would it be incorrect? The seven branches menorah is mentioned repeatedly in the book. So I don't I don't fall in line with those folks who say, well, the book's been tampered with. We don't know what it said. That would mean that man is able to checkmate the higher power. That would be like that would be like a supreme being saying, okay, I'm going to do this, And then man says, "Oh, well, I'm going to make sure you can't do that, and I'm going to mess it up so you can't have your way." That's impossible. He's not a supreme being if man can come behind him and throw a monkey wrench into his plan. That's that's crazy. So no, when it comes to this book, yeah, there may have been translations that are crazy and are wrong. That's why we don't use translations, because they're man-made. We go to the source language. That we let that be our authority, and that's where we stay, in the source, not with these crazy translations.
All right, we got about 3 minutes to go. 3 minutes to go. I don't want to take up the Ravenous Bird time. He's a very, very busy man. I don't know if you guys understand or really realize the work that he's doing here in the Philippines, Cebu, Philippines, in the wilderness. I mean, the offerings and the classes and just getting things together. I mean, seriously busy. So for him to take the time out to be with us this morning, I'm so appreciative. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time, and I wish you could see. I wish you could have seen his face today, but you'll get another chance to see it because we ain't done. We got work to do, but we're gonna take a couple more questions and then we're going to call it squits. So come on over there now. Instagram. I haven't got a question from you guys yet at all about everything you've heard today, everything you've heard thus far. What is your question concerning the ravenous bird, the prophecies, the name Yahweh? All that you've heard today, everything you've heard today, you can find it on his YouTube channel under the Ravenous Bird. The true name of the creator. There's a 3-part series on that. The brought by ships. If you really want to see how the true bloodline, the true biblical characters of the Bible, the people, the covenant keeping people of the Bible were scattered throughout the Aegeans and all over the country, all over the nation, all over the world, you can watch Brought by Ships. Brought by Ships. I think it's 4 part. It's a 4-part series on that. I'm telling you, you're going to be blown away by that. Also, keep silent before me islands. You got question and why Cebu, why Philippines, Cebu, Philippines, why this place? Go and watch Keep Silent Before Me Island. There's a 3-part series on that. And you will hear it in the source language, the biblical language. You will hear him explain it to you. It's right there for you. You're without excuse. And there's many more, but I want to mention one more, which I think this is the one that I would watch this one first. Because you've heard the word, you heard the name Yahweh, and it's being blazing fire from the east. So you know the word now. You know the name now. So you're without excuse. You know the name. I would go watch Leave on Wings. Leave on Wings. Leave on Wings, ladies and gentlemen. When we heard that, we've learned the name 2 years ago, and it changed our lives forever. We could not remain the same. But when we watched Leave on Wings, I looked at my wife. I said, "Honey, how do you feel about living in the Philippines?" And she's like, "Oh, here we go again." She's like, "Here we go again." And yes, it took us about a year to get all the paperwork done because the passport was an issue for me. But we didn't wait on the passport. We knew we were leaving, so we consolidate and sold off everything. And we sold off everything. My wife got her passport. Our daughter got her passport. And I was waiting for my passport, but we sold the house, we sold the business, we do everything, got rid of the cars, and we stayed with my brother for a month before I got my passport. As a matter of fact, I got my passport the day I was leaving because I booked my flight. That's how faithful I was and how serious I was. I wasn't even waiting for my passport. I booked my flight. When I went to the passport office, I tell them I have a flight, I have an itinerary. I'm out of here. And so the day, and this was in the height of the COVID, the day when I booked, the day when they scheduled me was the same day of the flight. And so I got my passport and we flew up the same day. Never looked back since. So don't wait for your passport to start getting the rest of the stuff you can do in order. That's for those who actually hear his voice, because not everybody's going to make it here. So, all right. So we got a couple more questions. Mabane, can you see those questions?
I see. Is it important to know your tribe before coming here? No. Is it acceptable to have online business after your departure? Sure, why not? Um, was the shofar ever a ram's horn? Not until the Jews said it was. No, it was never a ram's horn. Uh, those are the only questions I see.
All right. Any last words? Any last questions? We're running out of time here. But we want to drop it in there so you hear one or two more. All right. We got one more here. The root of the Jewish position and Russian can be found. Yeah, I guess that's not the question. All right. Karash, do you have any last words there, sir? Anything you would like to say? You know what? Before the last words, I guess you can make this part of your last word. Um, where can people find you if they want to get your literature or know more about it outside of the YouTube channel?
They can go to the website www.yaosharall.com, and there's a lot of stuff there they can look up.
Awesome. So you hear it there, guys. You can go to yaosharall.com. There's a lot of stuff you can look up there. Any last words for the people?
No, I think I covered it. Oh, there's one question here. If you don't make it out in time, are we damned? I don't like to, put myself in the position of saying if someone is damned. I will say that there's a reason he's telling you to flee, and that's because if you don't flee, then you're likely to be destroyed. But as far as where does your soul go, I don't. That's above my pay grade. What happens to you when you die? That's not for me to say. But physically staying here when he's telling you to flee will mean that if you don't flee, then you're likely to be suffer the same fate and be destroyed. So, that's like that's like the people. If Lot were here, or we're back there in Lot's time, and Lot was telling, "Look, we got to leave. The angels are going to destroy this place." And they said, well, "What if we don't leave?" What do you mean if we don't leave? What if we don't leave when you leave? Are we gonna be okay? No.
It's crazy. You got to look at Lot. You got to look at Lot and his family, right? They were commissioned to leave. One
Right.
look back, pillar of salt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you got to take this serious.
Yeah. You do.
Yep. All right. Well, we're gonna end it there, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, I want to say thank you to the Ravenous Bird
Shalom.
for taking this time here and joining with us. We appreciate you, man.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for being the type of man you are. The most patient, the most encouraging, the most awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Shalom.
All right.
Shalom.
Thank you. Shalom. Woo! Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you, man. Appreciate you. Don't forget to go to the Ravenous Bird page. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Time is running out. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you guys so much, man. Don't forget to like our page, all of our platforms. Facebook, Meka Alban Ya Osher Al. And Instagram at Meka Al1. Meka Al1. Now I'm starting up a new YouTube page. Actually, I had one there before. It's called OMPP. This is a podcast I'm starting. It used to be called Process to Purpose. And I did it on my phone in Matrame. I had about 9 or so on there. And you can find it on Podcast Podbean. Process to Purpose. But now I changed it to OMPP Podcast. OMPP Negro Chronicles, where I'll be reaching out to as many OMPP as possible. I want to thank you guys again. I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys. Don't forget to like this page. Don't forget to like Now Living in the Philippines. Like, subscribe to our channel. Help us to get to 10,000. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, help us to get to 10,000. 10,000. Share, like, comment. Until next time, I'm your host, Meka Alban Ya Osher Al. And this is Truth Matters Broadcasting, where we discern for ourselves the truth about religion, the kingdom of the only true God, and the church. Thank you. Good night. Good day. Good afternoon. Good evening. Until next time.